Hi everyone, welcome to the lecture series on computer architecture and organization. In this lecture, we are going to see the instruction set, that is the continuation of the previous lecture. So in the previous lecture, we saw about the instruction, arithmetic instruction format. In the arithmetic instruction format, it has the 32-bit has been split into 6 fields. That is the first field we discussed about the operational code, and further it comes with the registers and the shift amount, and then it end up with another 6-bit field. So consider the load word and store word instructions. So we have split that 32-bit into 5 and 6-bit fields. But in load and store instructions, we have an opportunity to use the address. So if you want to, if you are using the word addressing, then word addressing, we are not using word addressing here, we are using just byte addressing here. So if you want to represent the address, at least the field should include 8-bit. But in arithmetic instruction, that is R type format instructions, we didn't have any 8-bit field. So it is very too little to hold that offset from a base register. Okay, so what this design principle 3 states that good design demands a compromise. So if you want to design, we can compromise, we can change the field, we can change the number of bits that include in the field. So that's the thing, that's the compromise we are doing here. And this type of instruction, that is load and store instructions, are called as I type instructions. So I type for data transfer instructions. So here the 32-bit has been split into 4 fields. The first bit had 6 bits, and the second field has 5 bits, and the third field has 5 bits, and the last bit has 16 bit. It is an offset or the memory address. In order to represent the memory, we need to represent this as an offset, 16-bit offset. So the first is opcode, which represents the operation, that is for that is for load and store operation, and the next one is that the destination address in case of load instructions, and the next is the source register. Now the second register has a different role compared with that of this odd type. Okay, the first register is the source destination register in terms of load. In terms of store, then the first register is the destination register. Okay, the first register is a source register. Now the second register has changed its role. So this type of instruction, which we are calling this as I type instruction. And next comes the stored program concept. So what is the need of this stored program concept? So instructions are bit sequences just like data. So data, the instructions will be of bit sequences. Programs are often stored in memory, that is to be read or written just like data. So there are two things, one is the processor and another one is the memory. So the memory may include some data, programs, compilers, editors, everything. So what happens? The instructions are often fetched and put into a special register. The bits in the register control the subsequent actions, that is the execution, and fetch the next instruction, and the process repeat. So this cycle is called as fetch and execute cycle. And now this is SPIM. SPIM is a MIPS simulator. So there is a simulated tool we are having for this MIPS, which is called as SPIM. MIPS is MIPS spelled backwards. So reads MIPS assembly language files and translates to machine language. And this PIM executes this machine language instruction. It also shows the contents of registers and memory. It works as a debugger because it supports breakpoints and single stepping. So breakpoints, in the sense, we can put a marker inside any part of the program, and from that part of the program we can execute step by step, and we can see the values inside that program, what happens inside the program. And it also provides the basic OS like services like simple input and output operation. SPIM is freely available online. An important part of our course is to actually write the MIPS assembly code and run using SPIM. So that is the thing we are learning. We are not learning about the overlying, or we are not studying about the creamy layer. We are getting into that creamy layer. We are seeing what's just happening inside the program. So below the program and below the covers of your computer, that's the thing we are studying. Okay, so an important part of a course is to actually write the MIPS assembly code and run using SPIM. The only way to learn assembly is to write lots and lots of code. Okay, and this is about the order, how we can represent the byte order. Okay, so the memory organization can be represented with two orders. One is the big Indian byte order and the next is little Indian byte order. Often the Intel uses this little Indian byte order. So what is this big Indian byte order? In the sense, big Indian byte 0 will be at the leftmost, that is the most significant, to byte 3 at the rightmost. Okay, if you see here this big Indian memory, sorry, if you see this bit Indian, byte 0 will be at the leftmost, that is at the most significant, and byte 3 at the rightmost. Okay, this is big Indian memory. And little Indian memory, byte 0 will be at the rightmost and byte 3 will be at the leftmost. So this is the little Indian memory. So SPIM's memory storage depends on that of the underlying machine. So Intel or little Indian, as I have already said, because SPIM always shows words from left to right, a mental adjustment has to be made for little Indian memory as an Intel PCs in L labs. Starts at right of first word go left, start at right of next word go left. Okay, so you read this again, you will be able to understand. The word placement is memory or word access is the same in big or little Indian. Byte placement and byte access depend on big or little Indian because of the different numbering of bytes within a word, and the character placement is memory depend on big or little Indian because it is equivalent to byte placement after ASCII encoding. So now we have come into the part of this control operations, that is conditional branching. These instructions are used to make the decision, hence they are called as decision making instructions. What is the use of this instruction is that it alters the control flow. We may say that we can go from the third line of the program to 10th line of the program if one condition satisfies or if one condition not satisfied, like if else in a C program. So that is the one we are speaking here. So decision making instruction is change the next instruction to be executed. Okay, here there are two branch instructions which we are seeing, that is one is BNE and another one is BEQ. So what does this mean is that BNE in the sense branch if not equal, BEQ means branch if equal, and these two instructions comes under I-type instructions. Okay, so I-type instructions, as we have seen, it has only 4 fields. So coming to the next slide, we see here the explanation of this instruction. So instruction BNE $T4, instruction BNE $T4, $T5, label. So what does this mean is that next instruction is at label if the content in the register, that is $T4, is not equal to $T5. And not equal to, it is represented by exclamatory equal to, and BEQ. So what is this BEQ? Branch if equal. If the contents in the register $T4 is equal to the content in the register $T5, then the next instruction will be at label. So this BNE and BEQ, which we discussed in the previous slides, they are called as conditional branches. And another one branch which is called as unconditional branch. Say this example, it will be called as J-type instructions. That we called as I-type, load and store are called as I-type instructions, and arithmetic instructions or instructions. And now this unconditional branch, which they are called this as J-type instructions. So in this, it is represented as J label. So say for example, if I not equal to J, so branch if both are equal, here H is equal to I plus J, else H is equal to I minus J. Okay, so this is similar to branch if equal $S4 and $S5, both the registers are same, then it should go to label 1. That is, it means that if it is not, in the unconditional branch instructions does the opposite part of the F first. So it first checks whether both are equal. If it is not, if it is equal, then it will go to, that is the label 1, which performs the subtraction operation. And if you see the next part, then what is that is h is equal to I plus j. So that is the function. It adds the value of I and j. The I and j are placed in the registers $S4 and $S5 and the content is placed in $S3. Now we have given j label 2, that is LAB2. So likewise it goes on. So what is the meaning of this, what is the use of this unconditional branch is that if you see this example, if you explore this example, the assembler relieves the compiler and the assembly language programmer from the tedium of calculating the addresses for branch just as it does for calculating the data addresses for loads and store instructions. Okay. So the next thing is constant. Many times a program will use a constant in an operation. For example, incrementing an index to point to the next element of an array. So in fact, more than half of the MIPS instructions have a constant as an operand. Okay. So the operand, the quick add instruction with one constant operand, which we are calling this as add immediate or add I. Okay. So if you see this, here we are having the constants 5, 1 and 18. So what is the instruction is that we need to add the constant A with the register content of A, and we need to place that in the register A. We need to constant 1, add 1 with the register content of B, and we need to place that in the same register B. We need to subtract the constant A from the register content of C, and again we need to place that in C. Okay. So MIPS instructions will look like this: add I, SLT I, AND I, OR I operations. Okay. So if we make operand as a part of the instruction, then we call this as immediate operands, and the instruction always include I in this. Okay. So the constant 0 has another rule. A very important discussion regarding this immediate operand is that a constant 0 has another rule, that is to simplify the instruction set by offering useful variations. Okay. For example, the move operation is just an add instruction where one operand is 0. Okay. What we need to do is that we need to move the content of the register from the register to the accumulator. So one operand is always 0 here. Hence MIPS dedicates a register $0 to be hardwired to the value 0. Okay. So using frequently to justify the inclusions of constants is another example of the great idea of making the common case fast. So far we have discussed about the instructions that is of R type, I type and J type. So if you see this instruction, this format and its meaning, it gives a clear picture. The first instruction is add instruction, which includes only 2 source registers and 1 destination register, which comes under the R type instruction format. Second is subtraction instruction. So subtraction instruction again it also has only 2 source registers and 1 destination registers. Similarly, load and store has 1 destination register, and another one is the memory space or the memory address it denotes, from where it is need to be fetched in case of load instruction, and to which we need to store in case of store instructions. And next instruction, and these load and store instruction come under the type of I, as well as this branch not equal and branch equal. They are called as conditional branching equations. So these conditional branches also come under I type instruction. And last one we discussed about this jump instructions, that is J, which is given J, and the next thing is label. So next instruction is at label 3. So it is nothing but unconditional branch. So and also the J instruction executes the opposite part of this conditional one. So first it executes that, then it executes the unconditional branching, that is the next instruction is at label 3. And if you see the field, the R type has 6 fields, and this I type has only 4 fields, and the J type has only 2 fields. And the last part of our unit 1 is MIPS addressing modes. So the first address is immediate addressing, as we have discussed in the instruction, where one operand is a constant one. Okay. And next thing we discussed is register addressing, where the operands are only the registers. The operation takes place in the registers, and we need to move the content of one register to the next one. Okay. And the next is base or displacement addressing. So here, where the operand is at the memory location, it will be at a memory location whose address is the sum of a register and a constant in the instruction. That is called as base addressing. It is otherwise called as displacement addressing. And next is PZ relative addressing, where the branch address is the sum of the PZ and a constant in the instructions. Okay, PZ it stands for the program counter. Program counter tells the next instruction from where the next instruction to be fetched. Okay, and next is pseudo direct addressing. What is pseudo direct addressing? Where the jump address is the 26 bits of the instruction concatenated with the upper bits of the program counter. Okay, so these are all the addressing modes. That's all for the unit now. Before getting into unit 2, let us see some more introduction about unit 2. Thank you.